Speakers series today features Jim Lightbody, Interim President and CEO of BCLC. Jim has been involved with BCLC for the past 13 years and has recently been appointed as Interim President and CEO. Jim has more than 25 years of experience in consumer packaged goods and is an expert at leveraging networks to build a business. Join me in welcoming Jim.
Thanks very much. Well, thanks for that welcome, and glad it's a warm welcome. I was a little worried this morning when I was sitting in our office looking outside at the snow coming down, and was wondering how many people were going to show up today. And I'm glad to see there's a great crowd out today, but I now know it's not because you want to see me, it's because you want to win $1,000. So I'm a little disappointed that I don't have the drawing power that I thought I did, but hopefully, especially to the students in the crowd, you're going to get a chance to win some money, but also maybe you'll take something else away. If you don't take away any money, maybe you'll take away a little insight that somebody, namely myself, has gleaned over my career. And when I was thinking about what I might be able to share with you, I thought maybe it'd be best for me to tell you some stories. And what I thought I'd do is tell you some stories that I've learned throughout my career, and some ended up in a good place for the business I was in, and some didn't work. And I think we can all learn from not only our successes, but also from our failures or mistakes. So the topic I really want to cover today is the importance of relationships and how to really make them work for your business. I think everybody would say that that's a pretty obvious premise for us to have, but what I'm going to talk about are four themes that at least I've experienced that really were important in order for relationships or partnerships to work. And those key themes were really that you need to build a foundation of trust. That works for personal relationships, but it definitely also works for business relationships. Also, that you have to have a relationship, business relationship, where both parties benefit. And I'll tell you about an example where it wasn't like that and what the result was in that case. It's also important that the parties have really clearly defined roles in their relationship. And finally, that they have a common vision in terms of how they want to move forward together. So I'm going to start with actually where my career started, and I was fortunate to, after graduating, to start with a little company called Procter Gamble. And that was a very fortunate step in my career, because it was really like I guess a graduate degree in business. P&G is a very successful company around the world, but one of the reasons why they're very successful is because of the investment that they make in their people. So I, again, was very fortunate to recoup the benefits of that. And what I also learned at P&G was the importance of building trust in partnerships. So I'm going to tell you a story of when I was working in Alberta for them, and I was dealing with one of our retail partners, and that was Safeway. So in this scenario, we had the behemoth known as Procter Gamble, and I'll tell you, in those days, I think it's different now, we weren't really well liked by the retail partners, and especially by companies like Safeway. They saw, okay, here come these young guys in these blue suits, and they're going to tell us what to buy and how much, and not really respect us. And so I unfortunately had to follow a predecessor who didn't really build trust with the folks at Safeway. And my key contact at Safeway was a gentleman with lots more experience than I had. His name was Benny Elko, and I'll never forget him, because he was just a tough old nut, and he wasn't going to take it from some young gun in his blue suit with his P&G business card. So over a lot of time, I had to try to connect with this man, and it wasn't easy, because he obviously came from a different background, different generation than I did. But through a lot of time, through a lot of effort, and through showing that my actions were going to speak louder than words, I was able to build that trust with Benny. And the result was, for both our organizations, a growth in our business. And I can tell you, it really came to a head at one point because Procter Gamble worldwide viewed Alberta as a very significant market for them, because it was a market that they liked to use as a test market for many new products. And the reason was and Dr. Curry will like this because he spent some time in Texas and in the US, but Alberta and Albertans actually perform in their buying habits a lot like Americans, at least in the Midwest. And so if it was going to work, they could try some different things, but if that product was going to work in Alberta, they were pretty well convinced that it could also work in the Midwest of the US. But they couldn't really leverage that market if they couldn't get their products on the shelf in places like Safeway that had the big market share. So it was becoming a very big issue for the folks in Cincinnati who run Procter Gamble, that they couldn't leverage or use this Alberta market to test new products. So there was a lot of pressure and a lot of eyes on myself and my team in Alberta to make sure that we could do that. And it was, again, important for us to build that relationship with Safeway in order to do that. And we were able to accomplish that in the end. And I look back at those times as a lot of missteps along the way, but in the end, when we kept our relationship growing through that foundation of trust, it did work out for the benefit, not just for P&G, but also for Safeway, because they were able to also put out some products that the consumer wanted, and P&G makes some great products, and Safeway was able to leverage that. So building trust, that is my first theme. The second company I worked for, and I'll get after to change that slide now, was a company called Nabob. And now you're probably aware of Nabob, the coffee company, but back in the early 90s when I was there, it was actually part of the world's largest coffee and confectionery company, a company called Jacobs Suchard. And Jacobs Suchard had coffee brands around the world, like Nabob in Canada, but they also, if you ever been to Europe, and you'll see Jacobs Cafe, spelled with a J, that was the leading brand in many European countries. But it was also one of the leading confectionery companies, well, it was the leading confectionery company around the world with brands like Toblerone and Milka and a number of products also in the US. And the business model that Jacobs had was that the marketing company would reap all the profits, and the manufacturing company or the plant would just cover their costs. So if you were for example, the plant in Bern, Switzerland that made all the Toblerone for the world, they would just cover the costs, and a company like Jacobs Suchard Canada, aka Nabob, would be able to make all the margin for the opportunity to market it in Canada. And that worked in the traditional businesses they were in. But later on, they acquired a major confectionery company in the US called the E.J. Brock Company. So this is the company that you may have seen Pick-a-Mix and all those individual candies that you used to be able to get. I don't know if you can still get in grocery stores and other convenience stores. So it was our intention in the Canadian company to bring this product up into Canada, and it was a very popular product in the US, and we felt it was an opportunity for us to transform from being just a coffee company in Canada to also being a confectionery company. So we had our intercompany contract with E.J. Brock, which was headquartered out of Chicago. And it was my role, actually, to run this relationship and run this business with E.J. Brock and Nabob. And you would expect that where you have a contract with two parties, that it would just happen and everybody would work together and you'd get it done. And there would be no issue with trust because you were actually owned by the same ultimate shareholder. But what I learned was not so much. What I learned was that that company had a different objective, and their objective was to make profits for themselves, because although they were acquired by this major company, Jacob Suchard, they were also responsible for making their profits in the US, and also looking at exporting it themselves into other countries, including at one point Canada. So we actually ended up competing with our contractual partner. So the fact, and what I learned through this experience was, because they weren't making any profit on the Canadian business, they weren't interested in growing the relationship and growing the business. Just covering their costs was not good enough for them. So even though we had an ironclad contract, even though we had direction from our ultimate shareholder, they did not build the relationship with us. They did not do their part of the bargain to build the business. And in the end, we had to agree to disagree and just separate from the business. And it was a very important learning, I think, not only for myself and my counterparts at NABOB in the Canadian business, but also it actually, I think, rung a bell for the Jacob Suchard executives in Switzerland, because they now saw that maybe this model doesn't necessarily work as well as we thought, and maybe having this intercompany relationship needs to be adjusted, because when one plant doesn't benefit, they don't necessarily deliver on that relationship. So there was an example of when you don't have a position where both parties benefit, then it's unfortunately not going to work as a true relationship, a true partnership. And if you, Afton, where'd you go? I'm moving a little fast for you. So my next two stories are going to take a little longer. They're maybe a little bit more interesting, hopefully, but also a little bit more complicated. So I was fortunate then to move on to another exciting opportunity, and that was with a company. Now you may recognize BC Hot House as a brand that you have seen, but back in the mid-90s, it was actually a cooperative of about 50 greenhouse growers, and they were known as Western Greenhouse Growers Cooperative, and they were all over the Lower Mainland, and they unfortunately were in a position where they grew great product, but they were losing money, and they didn't know which way to turn. So they actually turned to a fellow who I was working with at NABOB, who was our vice president of marketing, and recruited him to become their new CEO, and said, we have nowhere to go but up, and we're hoping that you can save us. And he convinced me to come and help him in this regard, to try to turn around this sinking ship, if you will. The great thing that attracted myself and Glenn to this opportunity was the fact that there was a great story to be told with these growers. They made fantastic products. They grew the best fruits and vegetables that are available in the world. Little known fact, just as an aside, the Lower Mainland, the Delta area of British Columbia, is the best area in the world to grow greenhouse produce. Better than, and it was that the whole idea of greenhouse grown, hydroponic grown vegetables actually was started in Holland. But the temperate climate in the Delta area, the long days that we have at this latitude makes for the pristine growing conditions that you need in a greenhouse environment. So you can have long growing periods and also very strong growing periods. But as I said, they were in a position where they were losing money. So what they asked us to do was to take care of the we'll call the marketing side of the business. And they said, we'll do what we do best, and that's grow, and you need to do what we hope you can do best, and that's market. And that's where we really defined clear roles of this partnership. And so our role was to market the product, and there was a lot of things that we had to do there. We had to make sure that all our products were consistent, so they were packed and graded consistent. But we also needed the growers to try to do some different things, and I'll touch on that in a minute. But they also gave us free rein to try some things that they hadn't tried before. And if I learned anything in my first few months in the produce industry, is that there isn't many more competitive industries than the produce industry. And it's really run almost like a auction or stock exchange, where you have these salespeople every morning who are selling truckloads of tomatoes and peppers, and we didn't sell watermelons, but watermelons and the rest of the gamut. And these guys are selling for pennies a pound, and it's basically who can provide the cheapest price for the major chains and wholesalers around North America. And when we came on board, we were shipping tomatoes, believe it or not, from Vancouver all the way to Montreal and all the way to Boston, and in some cases all the way up and down the eastern seaboard. And for some reason that just that's the value sometimes of fresh perspective. You kind of, why are we doing that? Like, it's A, the cost of shipping, but B, we're dealing with a perishable item, so we're spending 5 days of that shelf life on a truck bouncing across the continent. So we created a strategy that said, let's focus on markets that are closer to us. We called it the I-5 strategy. And let's focus on not only British Columbia, but also down into Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, and tried to build a following there. There's millions of people, as you well know, up and down that corridor. So why rely on the markets in Montreal and Toronto and Boston when we've got real strong markets here in the West Coast? But that was, again, a shift for this company. And what we tried to do was know that we couldn't compete the standard rules of the produce industry, which are based on the lowest cost wins. Because if you're growing in a bunch of tomatoes in the field and you've got the lowest cost, well, then you can compete because you can therefore offer the lowest prices, and therefore you're going to sell more than the farm down the street. But we could never, ever compete against the field growers. Our prices, our costs, I should say, were always going to be 10 to 15 times higher than a field grower. But where we could compete was on quality. Where we could compete was on the look and flavor and actually nutritional value of our product. But we needed to change the rules of the game if we were going to be able to compete. So we took a page from our old packaged goods days in P&G and Nabob, and we said, let's not compete as a commodity, let's build a brand. And we built this brand called BC Hot House, and we leveraged some more consumer packaged goods strategies like advertising on television and radio, and also doing some public relations work with food writers and others in order to build this brand so that people, when they were coming to a Safeway, whether it's in BC or in Southern California, they'd say, hey, I saw these BC Hot House tomatoes or peppers or cucumbers. Don't you carry those? And that, for a produce clerk or manager in a Safeway, was really unheard of. Chiquita was maybe a brand that they'd heard of. Sunkist was a brand they'd heard of, but they'd never heard of a tomato brand or a cucumber brand or a pepper brand, for that matter. And the other thing that we did was we wanted to start to create relationships with the retailers instead of going through the wholesale channel. And so we were talking to the major chains in California and Oregon and Washington State, as well as BC, and going direct to those guys instead of through all the wholesalers, which again are more costly because they've got to make a margin, and we allowed them to focus on the field growing stuff, and we would focus on the greenhouse grown stuff. So changing that rule, building that relationship, and really having that clear role that our responsibility was for marketing the product and the grower's responsibility was for growing the great product worked as a real symbiotic relationship. And we were very successful because of that. In fact, when we started, our revenues were $27 million. And as I said before, each of the growers were losing money, unfortunately, even with that amount, but that was spread over 50 growers. About 5 years later, our top line revenues were now $270 million. We still had 50 growers. They were driving a lot nicer cars, I can tell you that. They were very profitable, and they were very appreciative of this approach, even though it made a lot of them nervous, because we did some crazy things in those days. We actually had a commercial that started out very nice and quiet, and actually showed, had some nice music, and then all of a sudden the quiet was broken by a plane flying over top and spraying pesticides all over this beautiful, pristine tomato field. And then we started talking about growing in the great indoors and talking about BC hothouse. And for a lot of our growers, that was scary, and it caused a pretty big stir down in California where we did that. But our customers responded very positively to that, and we built this brand, and we built our business. So it was a risky move at the time, but one that we felt was a measured risk, and one that worked in the end. So now I'm going to talk about BCLC, which is probably more near and dear to everybody here in Kamloops and here in British Columbia. And what I want to talk about in this regard is the importance of a common vision with your partner. So where you are aligned in your direction, you're aligned in where you're going to go, and of course where what you want to try to create. So in this story, I'm going to talk about my most recent responsibilities, which were in the casino and community gaming business here in British Columbia. So for the past 3 years, that's was my portfolio. I looked after is a $1.6 billion top line business, and that's what we call our net win. But you should know, in terms of the money that actually comes out of people's pockets and purses and played in our casinos and chances gaming centers, is more like $6.4 billion. So that's what comes out of pockets. And then a lot of it, of course, is won and taken home with them. But what stays at the casino is about 1.6 billion of that. So about a quarter of the we call the drop is what we hold at BCLC. And then what we do with that is we share that with our partners. So we pay a commission to our partners who build and provide the staffing in our casinos and community gaming centers, and that varies on the product type. For a slot machine, we pay a 25% commission, and for a table game like blackjack, we'll pay a 40% commission, and it's higher because of the labor component is higher because they have to provide the dealers, etc. for a blackjack game. So probably the best analogy that we've used to describe this model is like the franchise model, where BCLC's role is like the franchisor. We determine where these casinos and community gaming centers will be and what cities, and we also determine what they're going to offer. So are they, if it was a hotel, for example, they would determine if that hotel was going to have, say Marriott would be determining what various aspects of that hotel they would have. We would then determine whether it was going to have slot machines, whether it was going to have bingo, whether it was going to have table games, what type of table games, et cetera, et cetera. So that's BCLC's role in the business. And then we contract with these private operators to provide and really build and get the land and build the building and then provide the labor for it. So not unlike if you were a McDonald's franchisee, it's your responsibility to buy the property and build the building and then obviously provide the staffing and then provide the standards that McDonald's would have. So that's probably a pretty good analogy. And we have contracts with all of these we call service providers or partners. So there's no such thing as a casino license in the province of British Columbia. One of the most misunderstood things that everybody thinks there's these licenses. No such thing. And our legal counsel would love me for reminding you of that. So we have contracts, and these contracts are very explicit as to what their role is and what they're to provide at that location. And then, of course, we have staff that works in the properties alongside our service providers to do things like maintain the slot machine. So we have the responsibility to do that with technicians, et cetera. But this whole relationship is not going to work if we're not aligned in our direction and where we're going to go and agree on whether whose role is what and whether we trust one another. And we all agree as to what our final, call it, pardon the pun, destination is going to be in terms of what we want to provide the public and our players in our facilities. So our vision at BCLC is to provide and to make gambling widely embraced. And we say gambling because we don't want to dance around the word by saying gaming. We want to be very upfront and open about it. It shouldn't be a bad thing if we're doing it right. The gambling is widely embraced as a form of entertainment for adults. And that's what we should be proud of in this province, that it's a legal entertainment for adults. And I did say adult entertainment purpose. But it is something that our province decided if there's going to be gambling in this province, we don't want it being done by the Hells Angels. We don't want it to be done by any illegal operator. We're going to do it right, and so we're going to create this crown corporation called BCLC, and we're going to give them the responsibility to balance the opportunity for revenue to pay for a lot of great public good in this province. And we're going to balance it with that social responsibility to make sure that it's done right, that we are taking care of our players and doing all that we can to make sure that it is widely embraced and it is something that provides a great form of entertainment for adults in this province. So we kind of think of our casino business as this is the opportunity to create those playgrounds for adults and those places where people can go have some fun, do a little gambling, maybe have something to eat, maybe have something to drink, and hopefully meet some friends, new or old, at one of our facilities. And that's the vision for our business. And we are fortunate that our private operators are now getting aligned to that vision. They first have to understand it and understand their role in it, and then they have to make sure that we can get in that direction together. But the key in this vision is that word widely. Right now, to this day, I can tell you that we're not widely embraced. We don't have as many people as we would like who are enjoying our entertainment. There's actually about 1.6 million people in this province who visit a casino at least once a year or a gaming center. So that's good, but unfortunately, a little over 1.1 million of them are only coming once a month or less. And we'd like them to be coming maybe once a month, and so there's ones that are only coming 2 to 3 times a year. We'd like them to be coming once a month, and we think that we can provide them with the reason for doing that. But our challenge is we're right now not providing enough of that total entertainment experience. We're providing them with, we believe, some great gambling, but on the food and beverage and entertainment, not so much. And that's where we need to work with our partners to try to improve that situation. And it's not as easy as it sounds, unfortunately, because of that model I spoke of earlier, where they're only making 25% of the slot revenue. Just to give you a comparison, in Las Vegas, they're making more like 72% of that slot revenue. So the government in Nevada they have a different model, and theirs is like the licensee model or the license model. So if you go to Las Vegas, I'm sure many people here have, you'll find slot machines everywhere. You would find a slot machine probably in their universities. I'm not kidding. You'll see them in gas stations. You'll see them in casinos. You'll see them in grocery stores. You'll see them everywhere because the government just licenses them like that. But here in BC, we have that different model, which I termed the franchise model. But with that, while the province makes the most money in it, we now have to look at how do we now invest in this business so that we can get that greater entertainment offering to attract those what we call casual players to come more frequently. So we need to fix that, and that's in fact what we're trying to do right here in Kamloops. We're fortunate that we have two great partners, one who's not in a great situation. One of our partners, Pat and Gary Hart, who run the Chances over on the North Shore, they're doing a fantastic job filling that need of the market, and they're providing some great food and beverage and entertainment. Unfortunately, the Lake City Casino in downtown Kamloops is in a different situation where we know and they know that we've got to improve that casino in terms of its ability to offer a wider array of amenities and things like better food and beverage and other entertainment. So that's what we're working on. And unfortunately, it isn't as easy as it sounds. We're working with the Hotel 540, and we're working with a number of other stakeholders to try to solve that. And it's been a long road already. We've been working on it for years, and you can probably have read many things, many stories in the papers and heard on the radio here where we've tried. There's been lots of different ideas to try to improve that, and it hasn't happened yet. And for that, we're sorry because it isn't right that Kamloops and the people in Kamloops don't have a better casino here. So we're going to try to fix it, and it is going to take some time, so bear with us. But our intention is to build a much better entertainment complex for the public and the players in Kamloops. And we're fortunate that our partner has an alignment on that vision. Our partner, Gateway, has done that in other markets with us. So we know that they're capable of that. We know we have the will to do that. We just now have to find the way to do that. And also keep in mind that the city of Kamloops, the downtown core of Kamloops, also needs to remain vibrant. So those are the things that we're working on. All right. I didn't try to come here with a sales job, by the way, for you to do that, but it was just a great example, I think, of one of the themes that I wanted to talk about, where you need that common vision for a partnership to work. You need to have clear roles for that partnership to work, and you need to have a relationship where both parties are going to benefit that partnership to work. And probably most importantly, you need to trust that partner that they're going to do their part. So as you go forward, students in business, hopefully you don't make some of the same mistakes that I made in my career, but hopefully you also can learn a little bit from some of the successes that I've been fortunate to witness. and you can take some of that learning when you're going into business yourself, and remember those 4 key themes, because I will almost guarantee you that whatever business you get into, whatever industry you're into, you will need partners, you will need relationships, whether they're customers or suppliers or other joint ventures. You will need partners, and you will need to make sure that you're a good partner, because what goes around comes around.